So we had at least one ILR person on today. John Brennan. I don't know if you know John. I think he is leading the recently formed Masters of ILR Advisory Board.
Excellent.
I think. Yeah, then we have the speech and debate team coming up soon.
Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah, and then Lou Jean Flaren and Megan Connolly.
Yep, they're doing good stuff up in Buffalo.
Also. ILR is well represented in today's broadcast.
Excellent.
Okay, well, let's get going here. Welcome back to Giving Day Live. It is now just after 8:30 on the East Coast, and we are off to a roaring start. We are at 575,000 from 1,346 gifts. That is a good first third of Giving Day if I've ever seen it. And this is only the second time we've done it, so I haven't seen a lot, but we are doing great. We are, I believe, ahead of last year's pace. So please keep the support coming. And speaking of things you can get to know and support, I want to welcome my next guest, Linda Barrington. Linda is the Associate Dean of Outreach and Sponsored Research at Cornell's ILR School and also Executive Director of ICS. Welcome, Linda. Tell us a little bit about that thorough title.
Yeah, it's actually two different titles and each has multiple pieces. So I'll start with the Executive Director of ICS. ICS is our Institute for Compensation Studies. So that's actually how I got to ILR 6 years ago, was being invited by Kevin Halleck, who's now Dean of the ILR School, to help him launch the Institute. So ILR has a long history of academic study around compensation and pay, and we wanted to take that out into the world with the Institute and get a little more outreach in there. So that was how I showed up here 6 years ago. And I still do that, but since July, I've been taking on the role of the Associate Dean for Outreach and Sponsored Research, which is a lengthy title, and it seemed to get longer. I came on as the Associate Dean for Outreach, and then it became and Sponsored Research, so I'm hoping it holds at that.
And you're with the ILR School, but you are based in New York City, correct?
I am, and we have offices on 34th Street between Madison and 5th, and we do a lot of continuing education courses out of these offices. We also do the Johnson School will come down and host interviews here with employers because it's easier than getting all the employers up to Ithaca sometimes. So we try to be a focus for the whole campus as well as our own little outpost. Putting me in New York City was very purposeful because of the outreach role. So in ILR, our mission is to advance the world of work. And we do that through outreach, through extension, through public engagement. Those are all different ways that we try to take the amazing things that our faculty do on campus and get them out impacting the world.
Yeah, and I think we heard from our first guest this morning, John Brennan. He just gave a glowing endorsement really for all things ILR at Cornell. Really spoke highly and just talked about how just being associated and having a degree from ILR has really paved the way for him through a long career and now owning his own consulting company. So he made a strong case, but in your opinion, why should donors support your program area? Why ILR? Why outreach?
Well, it's ILR in particular is an incredibly unique college. We were established 70 years ago. This is our 70th anniversary this year, back after World War II when there we go. Thank you.
70. Just happen to have this next to me. All right.
You are well prepared.
Who would have thought? See, Mom? It's possible. Okay, anyway.
Exactly. So after World War II, there were a number of industrial labor relations, workplace-focused schools set up across the country. And the number of those has dwindled, and partly because the world of work has changed, and partly because ILR has, sort of cornered the market in this. So we look at all things work and work related. And so every conflict resolution in the workplace to HR practices to compensation to labor and employment law to union organizing to just amazing range. And because of that, we really have some pretty amazing alumni. Right now, 2 of the 4 commissioners of major league sports are ILR alum. Yep. And so that engage its students very early on the complexity of the workplace and all the things that it takes to run a good organization, be a leader of people, both in corporate America, in nonprofits, in government, across the spectrum.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking before we just started this interview about how it's a primary day in New York, and I'm curious, do you get more phone calls these days because the kind of the workers' issues and seem to be a big part of this presidential election in a way. I haven't been around for a long time, but I'm in my mid-30s. I remember a few presidential elections. It seems like kind of the work-related issues, be it minimum wage or other things, seem to be talked about a lot during this election.
Absolutely, and ILR is right there in the conversation. We have, for lots of reasons that we talk a lot about at ILR, but we are in a historically high environment of income inequality. And so that's really driving so much of the political discourse right now. And that frustration with how do you help economies grow? How do you help people benefit from that growth? How do you make everybody feel engaged? And we spend a lot of time in classes talking about that, engaging our students. The focus of Kevin Halleck, one of his things he focuses on since he became dean almost, a year ago now, has been that student experience and how do we really engage students in what's going on in the world around them. And we've just hired a new assistant dean for student experience that's going to do even more to connect all the students across career services, across internships, across global learning experiences. You said you're going to be talking to Lou Jean and the folks up in Buffalo later, and they do an amazing job with engaged Cornell and student learning experiences, immersing them in the community so that they're taking what they learn in their HR management classes, in their organizing classes, and saying, how do we take this into community organizations in Buffalo to really make a difference right away? So it's an incredibly exciting time to be a student, and I think also to be an alum of ILR, because you've got all that background to build off of.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of background, could you tell us a little bit more about what was your path to Cornell and ILR?
Yeah, well, I have to fess up, I am not a Cornellian. at all, not an
That's
ILR.
okay.
But as I said, came to help launch the Institute for Compensation Studies. I came from the Conference Board, which is a business membership organization. And if you ever heard the consumer confidence numbers, that's a number that
Yes.
the Conference Board puts out. So it was a place that was trying to bridge between research and the business world. I had come there from Barnard College, so I have a PhD in economics, was on faculty at Barnard College, and actually got a little frustrated with feeling like, you couldn't get the research that you were doing in the bowels of academia out into the real world. And the Conference Board was my first step in trying to make that happen. And then coming to Cornell has really been an even better part of that journey, because it has this focus, very strong focus on outreach and extension and engagement, where we're constantly saying, how do we take the research and experience of these amazing minds up in Ithaca and translate that into practice? How do we have communication and with practitioners and on the front lines, and feed that back to our faculty to say, these are the issues, this is what people are struggling with. And then how do we, the piece that I also really love about ILR that I didn't have that you don't have in a nonprofit or a think tank, is the students. So how do we then take those minds and get them engaged in the community and in the problems people are facing and the challenges of the workplace from day one? So it's been a great progression, and I'm thrilled to be here at this point. It's been good.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work, but it sounds like really important and good work at the same time.
It is. And I think that's part of what gets that passion among ILR alumni, is that they, are constantly seeing things that relate back to their coursework, no matter how many decades ago they took those classes. There's still issues of organized labor. New York City's, got Verizon striking. There's still issues of, frontline challenges for employees in working with employers. And now that's a whole new issue when your employer is Uber, which isn't classified as an employer. But how do we think about employees controlling their workplace and getting the most out of their jobs when they're in this netherworld of freelancing and employment, but not quite either? So it's a very exciting time for a lot of these issues.
So it seems to be a general loss of control as technology and other things evolve. So hopefully you can have a little more control over the future of ILR. So what's that look like? As my final question to you, what's the future impact of ILR look like out there?
Well, I think, to your point, this people feeling no matter what they do for a job, or how many jobs they're doing it in, this sense of feeling like they're losing control, it just says that ILR is more important than ever. I mean, we're in the middle of an amazing technological revolution, on the scale of the first and second industrial revolutions. And those are totally changing the world of work in like really big ways. And you think about those last industrial revolutions where we invented the 40-hour work week, we abolished child labor, we set up unemployment insurance. And you say, okay, we're now in that kind of revolution in the workplace, industrial revolution. So what should the rules of the game be? It affects all of us. How do we think about saving for retirement? How do we think about, whether we want to be a freelancer or an employee, and how much we give up when we do that? How do we think about global supply chains? I mean, even supply chains, not just of goods and services, but of people, and how people are moving around the world to follow work, to be, often in unhappy ways. We have an alumna who's very involved on the human trafficking issue, right? Talk about a big global issue. So I just, we've got a new strategic plan going on to look at some of these issues. We've got a plan to revitalize and reinvigorate an Institute for Workplace Studies that's going to be taking on a whole initiative around the future of work. We had a school-wide book project this February, and over Christmas break, everybody read the same book about the impact of technology on the workplace, and then had conversations and debate over that. We had a debate panel, which I know you're going to have the debate team on later. So yeah, so all of these challenges are big and daunting, but it makes being at ILR and the work we're doing just that much more important.
Well, Linda, it sounds like there is an incredible amount of important work going on. And it sounds like ILR continues to churn out impressive students that really stand to benefit all of us that are, in the workforce out there, trying to plan for retirement and just be productive and healthy and stay sane at the same time.
Exactly. No matter what college or school at Cornell you're in, you will probably end up working at some point in your life. So ILR is still important to you.
We hope.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Just really informative, and again, always really impressive stuff coming out of ILR. And being as it's Giving Day, if you're an ILR alum or just are really inspired by the work that they do, consider supporting ILR in the next or so, or sooner, or multiple times, whatever you want to do. Linda's okay with it.
Well, thank you for doing this today. I know you are
oh, you're most welcome.
Pulling an all-nighter here, and it's wonderful for you to take the time and do this.
I have 2 young kids, so I'd be up anyway, right? I'd be on second or third dinner right now, so not a big deal.
Oh, that's great.
Well, thanks so much, Linda, and we will be back in about 9 minutes with Professor George Hudler, and he has some interesting, looks like I'm looking at some various examples of fungus that he's brought with him today. So we look forward to that. Come on back. We'll see you soon.